Let's talk to Kendra Andrews about it, who has been with the Warriors all year. ESPN does a great job in and out of the facility there and can add some perspective to all of this. Larry Krueger in for Dibs. We'll get back to your calls at 888-957-9570. But, hey, Kendra, thanks for coming on. How do you think this matchup landed with the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, I think the team is pretty happy with it. I was walking out with Draymond Green last night as he headed to the buses, and I asked him, I said, look, when that game is coming down to the wire, that Clippers-Suns game is coming down to the wire, are you rooting one way or another, right? Because they could have been facing the Suns in this first round, and Draymond said, look, every team in each series is going to present its own version of challenges, so just because the Kings historically haven't been in the playoffs, haven't been as competitive until this year, they're not taking the series lightly. It's going to be a series with explosive offensive power. I mean, these are two of the highest scoring teams in the league, and that should set itself up to be a very entertaining series to watch.
Kendra, how much do you think tempo and the bat? Sometimes you play your tempo, you get it, you have an advantage, and you mentioned these teams can score. They can, do the Kings play the up-tempo better than the Warriors, or does nobody play the up-tempo as good as the Warriors, and the Warriors will feel free to get out and run with Sacramento?
Yeah, I mean, better is a hard, like you said, it's hard to really fully judge if it's better or worse, but I'll say that it's right there up with them. And when you look at, again, like possible matchups in the Western Conference, I don't think there's anyone who can run with the Warriors like the Kings. As you said, like you think back to last season's playoffs and you look at how the Warriors defeated Denver. They forced them to play their game by playing quick. Well, the Warriors can't say, hey, we're going to fight. Sorry if you hear a TSA announcement. I'm in an airport right now.
No problem.
They can't say, hey, we're going to run them to the ground, because the Kings can keep up with them. And again, I think that's going to make this series just so fun to watch. How De'Aaron Fox and Stephen Curry and Jordan Poole, how those guards play against each other, how the small big men like Domantas Sabonis and Draymond Green, just those unique power forward center positions are going to play against each other. It's going to be, I think, probably one of the most high-tempo and exciting, fun offensive series to watch.
Kendra, it's interesting because they did what they had to do over this final 10-game stretch. They go 8-2. But you know some of the idiosyncrasies of who they played and what those teams offered. So I'll just ask you in a general sense, you feel like the Warriors are playing well right now or not?
I think they are. Like you said, you look back to their last game of the season, the Portland Trail Blazers, and you look at the way they were shooting, and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, like that is the best that they've ever looked. And then, as you said, well, you look at who they're playing, so you have to take that with a grain of salt. That being said, they're getting there, right? They're taking steps forward. I don't look at this team and say they're in dysfunction, they have no hope. They could very well go on another deep playoff run. There is nothing that suggests that they can't. And just the way that they have been progressing over the last couple of days is good. Of course, there are still things that they have to figure out. They're not perfect. And unlike last season's playoff, where, you were waiting for Steph to come back from his injury, he's back game one of that Denver round one series, and they just took off. I don't think it's going to be as dominant as that. You'll bring Andrew Wiggins back into the fold, and that should definitely help. But again, I think they're taking the correct steps forward as they enter the playoffs, but they're not at their peak level.
Sabonis is going to be fun to watch. Obviously the Warriors have Green. If they want to go fast, they've got Looney. Do they start with Looney and go to Green? And I guess what part of Sabonis's game concerns you most? Is his ability to garner extra possessions by rebounding, or is it more as a distributor?
Yeah, it's hard to tell which way that Steve Kerr would choose to go, because he has been going back and forth a lot, and even recently on whether he's going to be starting big or starting small. And again, you bring Andrew Wiggins back into the fold, and what does that make the starting lineup look like then if you're going to go small? It's something that we have to ask Steve. In terms of what I think is the scariest part of Sabonis' game, of course, him rebounding is scary, but I think the Warriors can combat that well. Kevon Looney has just been an absolute menace on the glass this season. For me, it is the distributing, and it's the way that he really sets up their entire offense. His pick and roll with De'Aaron Fox is just incredible, and the way that those two guys garner so much attention. Well, then you have all these other capable shooters on that team that they find and get the ball to. So for me, it's Sabonis' threat as a facilitator, but then also when he decides not to dish it out, he can score himself. And so his overall, all-around game is something that makes him very fascinating to watch.
ESPN's Kendra Andrews, all over the Warrior Beat, is with us here on Willard and Dibs. Larry is in for Dibs on 95.7 The Game. All right, I'm going to admit it, Kendra. I need to be convinced. I've watched the NBA for a long time, and what always works in the playoffs, aside from great talent, experience, defending home court, and playing defense. The Kings do none of these things. Why am I supposed to believe that the Kings are actually dangerous in this postseason?
It is something that you're going to have to, I think you have to see it in order to fully believe it. Look, I remember having conversations with people at the start of the season, right, when the Kings got off to this incredibly hot start with their hot offense, and you say, it's not sustainable. They can't keep this up for 9 months. And then they do. And as you said, you're completely right that the playoffs are so different. You have to play defense. But I'm not counting out the Kings and saying, the Warriors are going to sweep them or Warriors in 5. I think this is a series that could go to 6. The Warriors have also really struggled to win on the road, right? Now, Golden One Center will be a softer, road arena for the Warriors in this series because there's so many Warriors fans in Sacramento. But I'm not saying that the Kings are completely out of the picture, but I also understand why the Warriors are heavily favored.
I kind of look at Malik Monk as a wild card factor. I mean, this guy went for 45 in a game earlier this year against the Clippers. Is it as simple as stick GP2 on him and try to turn off his water? How do you think they'll defend Monk? Because when he goes off, you look at those games, they're winning most of them.
Yeah, he's definitely someone that you don't want to let get going. You can stick GP2 on them. The thing with the Warriors, when you look at their defense, is they have so many capable guys who can defend guards, right? You also have Dante DiVincenzo, who's really been good defense. I've mentioned Andrew Wiggins a couple of times, who'll be coming back, and they can take turns. So the Warriors have the benefit of having a steady rotation and flow of guys. Okay, who do you want to stick on De'Aaron? Who do you want to stick on Malik Monk? You have options, and you're not going to be limited to just one thing.
Kendra, you did mention Andrew Wiggins a couple of times, but let's go a little deeper. What do you think the plan is?
The Warriors are planning on having him back for game 1, right? That is the absolute plan. I've been told that, maybe he could have, he's looking good in his scrimmages and his practices. They wanted to play it really safe with keeping him out of that Portland game, but the Warriors are happy with his progression. So if he's gonna be starting or not, I don't know. I remember when Steph Curry came back from his injury heading into the playoffs last season, they opted to bring him off the bench for the first 2 games. So that's not out of the question for Andrew Wiggins, who missed 2 months, right? But the good thing with Andrew Wiggins is that he was able to work out while he was away with the team. So the team is feeling comfortable about bringing him along a little bit quicker, and having him ready to go in game 1.
De'Aaron Fox has just been a revelation. I think maybe the best thing Mike Brown did all year was just put the ball in that kid's hands, and then they just ran, rolling downhill. And can the Warriors make him expend energy on the defensive side of the floor to try to negate some of the explosiveness he has on the other end?
Maybe. I mean, again, I think it kind of goes full circle back to what we were talking about with pace, right? The pace that this series could be played at. If you're chasing around Stephen Curry and Jordan Poole all night, that does take a lot out of you. And if that's how the Kings decide to match up and defend the Warriors, then it is going to take a lot out of him. But it's the thing with De'Aaron, and what I've observed, is he is just like a little Energizer bunny, right? He is always moving. But again, that's not chasing around guys like Stephen Curry and Jordan Poole in a 7-game series for 30-plus minutes a night.
Kendra, I'm curious about your view on what has been the big talking point of the whole year. They can't figure out why they can't win on the road. We also know how this season started. It's led a lot of us to say, boy, there's something in this chemistry mix that doesn't feel right, and maybe that's why they struggle away from home. Do you share that idea? What's your view on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely some truth to that. And I think that you can decipher that from some of the language that the team has been using all season when describing their losses and when they've struggled. You hear the word fractured. You hear the word no communication. You hear, the word scattered. You hear the word disconnected. Like, you hear all of those types of things that is so much the antithesis of what the history of the chemistry of this dynasty has been. So when I hear the word fractured or scattered or we're not communicating, you do think, okay, well, why is that? And you, like you said, you go down the laundry list of things that have happened this season. And that's not to say that they are not, trying to come together and make another championship run, because they are. But again, when you hear those words consistently used from October, November, all the way up into April, it's not nothing.
Kendra Andrews, ESPN. Thank you for hopping on, especially from the airport. Thank you for squeezing us in.
No problem. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks,
All right, there
Kendra.
she goes. Kendra Andrews, ESPN on the Warrior beat. Look.